producing enough food to sustain the Earth's population is becoming more of a challenge. As environmental constraints keep tightening, technological innovation may be the answer to future food security. Compare the status of food production and food security in Australia with that of developing nations. Consider some claims and evidence about food production. Statistics show that drivers aged 17 to 24 have the highest risk of being involved in crashes resulting in death or injury. As a result, the Queensland graduated licensing system has been designed to give novice drivers more supervised on-road driving experience, including identifying and dealing with hazards, to improve their driving skills with minimal distraction. There are no lectures at this university, but plenty of nature walks, craft, museum trips, and a graduation held in a cave. Primary school students from the regional town in South Australia have become the first in the area to graduate from Children's University, a program run by the University of Adelaide to encourage learning outside the classroom. The top U.S. commander in the Pacific warned Tuesday he must imagine the unimaginable in responding to the threat posed by the North Korea's nuclear weapons program. The U.S. and South Korea on Monday began a 10-day joint naval exercise in a fresh show of force against the North, with a U.S. aircraft carrier and 2 U.S. destroyers taking part. Boredom is a word no one should have in their lives. Sometimes it's unavoidable, we understand, but there comes a point when you just need to get extreme. Technology is catching up to your imagination, and now you can fly on water, powered by water, while diving through water. For now, it is not known whether the cause was due to safety or mechanical problems, pilot error or interference, but these are elements that will likely be examined during the course of the investigation. The country's maintenance record of both military and commercial aircrafts will also likely come under close scrutiny in the coming days. He was famously macho and spent a lot of time hunting wild animals, going to wars and getting into fights. All these things got into his books, and the speaker thinks that this is not necessarily a good thing, as it means that too many people prefer to read about his life than read his books. Have you ever wondered why the English computer keyboard is set out in the way it is instead of in alphabetical order? The reason for this is on early typewriters, the keys needed to be arranged in a certain way so that the mechanical rods which held the letters did not clash too much and jam. Since April 2017, a canoe powered solely by solar energy travels back and forth along the 67-kilometer 42-mile stretch of the Kopawari and Paistaza rivers that connect the 9 isolated settlements that live along their banks. The solar canoe is an ideal solution for this place because there is a network of interconnected navigable rivers and a great need for alternative transport. One of the oldest and most prestigious cultural awards, the Nobel Prize for Literature, could be cancelled this year, with the organization responsible admitting it faces a crisis. The circumstances that might lead to this year's award being postponed are unique, but there have been years without a Nobel Prize for Literature. Scientists have pieced together the skull of a strange ancient bird, revealing a primitive beak lined with teeth. It has long been known that birds evolved from dinosaurs in what was a slow gradual process, involving feathers, wings and beaks. Evidence for feathers has shown up in the fossil record, but it has proved very difficult to study the anatomy of the tiny delicate skulls of ancient birds. The researchers took into account other potentially influencing factors, such as a woman's weight, reproductive history and use of HRT, but they weren't able to consider genetic factors, which can influence age of menopause. The study is observational and cannot prove any cause, but the researchers offer some possible explanations behind their findings. Harmful workplace practices include things like long working hours, work-family conflict, economic insecurity arising from job losses and not having regular or predictable work hours, an absence of job control and, in the US, not having health insurance. The workplace is making people sick and even killing them, and people should care. On the night of the 7th of December 1703, the United Kingdom was visited by an extreme weather event. Following weeks of wind and rain, a cyclone blew through the country at midnight, from the Welsh coasts to the Midlands and the south of England, hitting the cities of Bristol and London in particular. The dreaming is what Aboriginal people call their more than 40,000-year-old history and mythology. In this case, the dreaming describes how the Gulf of Carpentaria and rivers were created by the tiger shark. The story has been passed down by word of mouth through generations of the Aboriginal Yarnua people, who call themselves people of the salt water. It's also touted as a therapeutic tool to help anyone suffering from conditions and disorders including stress, anxiety, depression, addiction and chronic pain. More broadly, meditation has come into vogue as a way to enhance human performance, finding its way into classrooms, businesses, sports locker rooms and people's smartphones through internet apps like Headspace and Calm. Freshwater lakes play an important but relatively unrecognized role in the global carbon cycle, contributing around 16% of the Earth's natural emissions of methane, compared to just 1% from all the world's oceans. The gas is produced by microbes in the sediment at the bottom of lakes who consume organic matter that falls into the water from plants and trees that live close to the shore. It's one of only 4 places in the world to be granted sanctuary status. It's isolated, has a small resident population and is free from the electricity grid. What this means for travelers is less light pollution and more protected stargazing. At night the Milky Way spans the sky and the Magellanic Clouds, not visible in the northern hemisphere, are easily seen. Recent advances in technology have meant that hearing aids are now smaller than ever. These devices fit discreetly in the ear canal and are custom-made for comfort. One of the most difficult environments for people suffering from hearing loss is when there is heavy background noise or multiple people talking at the same time. The genetic changes behind the expansion of human brains that played an important role in our ability as a species to think, problem-solve, and develop culture have been elusive. But in a pair of papers publishing May 31st in Cell, 2 teams of researchers identify a gene family that appears to play an important role in human-specific cortex development. Becoming a NASA astronaut or going to Mars is often the first thing people think about when it comes to having a space career. But, while there are more astronaut training opportunities than ever, actual openings for space travel are still limited. Many of which are here because of cheaper satellite technology and a boom in private space industry funding. A universal basic income, UBI, is a simple idea, a periodic cash payment unconditionally delivered to all on an individual basis, without means test or work requirement. Scholars, activists, and politicians are increasingly becoming aware of the radical potential a UBI could have for societies around the world, from economic security, fairer wealth distribution, justice and poverty eradication and gender equality. The growing danger of animal selfies, and of feeding wild animals, is well documented. A 2017 study looked specifically at kangaroos who are exposed to wildlife tours. It concluded that both wild and captive kangaroos can be stressed by humans approaching them closely, and that the presence of tourists may drive them away from feeding, breeding or resting areas. According to the Bureau of Meteorology, it was the 8th driest April on record with rainfall across grain, sheep and cattle heartlands in southern Australia well below normal. At 63% below average, April rainfall across Western Australia was the lowest since 1994. Despite this, WA's grains industry estimates growers in the state will forge ahead with seeding this year's crop. AMP has received the largest shareholder protest vote for a major company in Australian corporate history, amid the ongoing fallout from its disastrous appearances at the Bank and Financial Services Royal Commission. More than 61% of votes were directed against the adoption of the company's remuneration report. Unreliable and unaffordable air services are adversely affecting healthcare in the Mount Gambier area, experts in South Australia's largest regional city say. The concerns have been raised by locals as part of a Senate inquiry into flight prices in regional, rural and remote locations. Price, reliability and scheduling were the key factors in businesses making decisions about traveling by air. Telstra has warned investors to brace for a profit at the lower end of its guidance range, but remains committed to a 22-cent total dividend payment. Telstra has blamed challenging trading conditions for a pre-tax and interest profit that is now expected to come in at the bottom end of a previously stated $10.1 to $10.6 billion range. You aren't imagining things. If you look closely at the fine print on the packaging, you may see it has changed ever so slightly. The numbers tick down by a few ounces, the sheets on those rolls have grown shorter. And there have probably been many, many times that you just haven't noticed. It's clearly the sort of public relations problem that most brands would prefer to avoid. To boot, long before products hit shelves, there are usually costs incurred to retool manufacturing facilities to accommodate an altered package. According to the UK's Office of National Statistics, 2,529 products on supermarket shelves decreased in size or weight in the 5 years between 2012 and 2017. Right now is the perfect time to get involved because humanity is getting excitingly close to making some fundamental discoveries about our place in the universe. Missions are being currently planned to explore some of the places which seem to have massive liquid water oceans beneath their frozen surfaces, Saturn's moon Enceladus and Jupiter's moon Europa. The new point of consumption tax, POCT, will apply from the start of 2019 and will be set at 8% of a bookmaker's monthly winnings. It is forecast to raise $30 million a year. Victoria has fallen well short of other states which have either implemented a 15% rate or have promised to do so. It is unfortunate that this tax plan is over 7 years and not 4. This means that 3 years of this tax plan are outside the scrutiny of the budget and we are unable to properly assess its cost. It is also problematic that the most expensive parts of the tax cut that go overwhelmingly to high-income earners start on the 5th year. From highly skilled professional athletes to hobbyists after the rush of the open waves, surfing is enjoyed by people from all walks of life, from all over the planet. All you need is ocean, but not always, a board of some kind, waves, and a lot of enthusiasm. These monster Portuguese waves can reach epic proportions of over 100 feet, 30.5 meters, thanks to a combination of the location of the coast and the unique undersea features. Waves generated by storms in the North Atlantic are focused by a deep, arrow-shaped canyon 16,000 feet, 4,877 meters, below the ocean's surface. The English language is forever in flux, as new words are born and old ones die. But where do these terms come from and what determines whether they survive? Charting linguistic change was once a painstakingly slow task, but a new analysis of nearly 1 billion tweets, presented on the 17th of April at the Eva Lang International Conference on Language Evolution in Torun, Poland. Compared to historical linguistic corpuses, the data available online is staggering. More than 20% of Americans were using Twitter at the time of the study, and each tweet is timestamped and geocoded, offering precise information on the time and place that particular terms entered conversations. The researcher behind the study analyzed more than 980 million tweets in total. Build a web, catch a fly, wrap the fly in silk, then devour at leisure. This hunting strategy has proven so effective that orb-weaving spiders are one of the most successful groups of animals. They are found in almost every corner of the world, and there are more than 3,000 species. In a study published in November 2016, Ormiga and his student Ligia Benevides described 5 new species. Their study also featured the first report of female pirate spiders caring for their young. Maternal care is relatively common in spiders. Some merely regurgitate prey for their young, while others go as far as allowing their spiderlings to feast upon their corpse. A widely used method of encrypting emails has been found to suffer from a serious vulnerability, researchers say. PGP, Pretty Good Privacy, is a data encryption method sometimes added to programs that send and receive email. Details about the vulnerability were released by the Süddeutsche Zeitung newspaper prior to a scheduled embargo. Cape Town should now be able to build up its own ability to withstand another drought like this one, not only with its water plans, but also by putting in new legislation to ensure homes are more water efficient in the future. But more than that, it is hoped people will stick to the changes they have. The plight of the drought-hit South African city is just one extreme example of a problem that experts have long been warning about: water scarcity. Despite covering about 70% of the Earth's surface, water, especially drinking water, is not as plentiful as one might think. Only 3% of it is fresh. Local officials in the southern Indian city have been bamboozled by the growth of new property developments following Bangalore's rise as a technological hub and are struggling to manage the city's water and sewage systems. To make matters worse, the city's antiquated plumbing needs an urgent upheaval. A report by the national government found that the city loses over half of its drinking water to waste. Lava reaching temperatures of 1,000 degrees and plumes of poisonous gas shooting up through cracks in the ground have forced hundreds of people on Big Island, Hawaii, to evacuate their homes. After the Kilauea volcano, one of the most active volcanoes in the world, erupted, slow-moving rivers of lava in the Leilani Estates area have covered more than 100 acres. Emissions of a banned, ozone-depleting chemical are on the rise, a group of scientists reported Wednesday, suggesting someone may be secretly manufacturing the pollutant in violation of an international accord. Emissions of CFC-11 have climbed 25% since 2012, despite the chemical being part of a group of ozone pollutants that were phased out under the 1987 Montreal Protocol. Sunnybank has long been home to Brisbane's biggest Asian community, but that could be on the cusp of changing as well-heeled Asian families abandon their favourite suburb to be close to prestigious schools in Brisbane's inner west. Local agents on both sides of the river said the trend began to emerge a couple of years ago. Turns out that there is an upside to those chilly Canadian winters, and it is called ice wine. This unusual dessert wine is produced from grapes that have been frozen while still on the vine. The sugars within the grape do not freeze, but the water does, creating a more concentrated, sweet wine. The truth is that the 19th century belonged to Europe, and our great ties with those nations, especially Great Britain, helped us establish ourselves in the modern world. The 20th century was driven by the force of the North American economy, and it became the American century. Integrated electronics, such as charging stations and digital scales, are taking a back seat to simple, no-nonsense designs. This new emphasis on simplicity can be attributed to new airline restrictions on smart luggage that went into effect late last year, specifically the models with integrated batteries. And perhaps to feature fatigue among travelers who just want a bag that holds their stuff. A 2016 study of high school and college students by Stanford's Graduate School of Education found that young people's ability to reason about the information on the internet can be summed up in one word: bleak. When it comes to evaluating information that flows through social media channels, they are easily duped. Independent schools boast an average of one full-time teacher librarian and one full-time library support staff member per school. Catholic schools have one half-time teacher librarian and one half-time support staff member, while on average, government schools have a teacher librarian for 1.5 days a week and a library support staff member for 3 days a week.